We are here and we are live. How's it going, everybody? Shout out all my amazing Mets fans first chiming in live on our replay. It's your guy Wardy here. We're back at it with our latest Big Mets Updates live show here. The first one in basically what feels like a week. It's been 5+ days since we did a live stream, which honestly, not even sure how that happened. I think just because we all need a couple days break, postpartum there that we saw pretty much with the Mets season coming to an end now. Postpartum, what am I saying here? You know what I'm trying to say. The Mets season has come to a close, and now as we head into the offseason, we have a lot of things to be excited and optimistic about, but we all kind of need a couple days to relax and unwind. And while I came out with some video content for you guys, it felt really wrong to not be live here for the first time in north of a week. So I'm really happy to be here right now. We have a lot to break down in today's latest segment presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. A little bit more on them later, but simply, folks, make sure to check them out by going to betus.com.pa. That way you too use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too get 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. And thank you so much in advance for doing so with our amazing sportsbook here on the channel. But in today's segment, folks, we're going to break down all the latest remarks from David Stearns' presser that he had just a couple days ago. The key takeaways, in my opinion, that we should really look at and highlight from there. How the Mets are not only destined to spend, but to spend big, to say the least. That's quite an understatement this offseason. Yeah, you know how the Mets didn't spend a whole lot last offseason because they were going into a so-called punt year, a transition year with David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. Well, now the Mets have north of $200 million coming off the books, a lot of money to play with, and a little man by the name of Juan Soto that the Mets are going to be pushing hard for from the start of the Yankee-Dodger run happening there in the World Series. So much to break down, from key David Stearns comments to how the Mets' philosophy will be this offseason, some early free agent targets, including the latest on Juan Soto, Roki Sasaki, among others, to the biggest names that will likely be the biggest names out there this offseason. Maybe some other players that you haven't heard about discussed too much in the Mets realm, among other things. Rest assured, also including guys of Mauricio, Jett, Drew Gilbert, what is going on with them, and then some. That to a T is what we're going to break down in today's live show. So thank you all so much for chiming in, folks. We greatly appreciate you. I'm going to do a quick roll calling out to everyone I see in the live show, and then we're going to continue on from here. Hey, Wardy, I made a new vid. I mentioned you in a shortened vid. That's awesome, Pete Alonso Parada. I'll definitely make sure to try to check that when I get the chance. Let me know where you post it, if it was on YouTube or if it's on X. Let me know. I'll definitely try to check it out. Draco, Deuce, Ethan, Dominic, great member. How are you, my man? I can't see you. The screen is black. That is unfortunately not a problem for everyone else, but that is a you problem right now, Dominic. I'm not sure exactly what happened there where you can't see me, but I'm pretty sure everyone else can see and hear me just fine right now. Let me know if you guys don't, or if there's a problem there. Otherwise, appreciate you chiming in. Steve, how you doing? Mike, a great member. Mike Nixon, great member and moderator as well. Going up the list here. Scott A, Eugene, how you doing? Ethan, Jingaru, that damn good. How you doing? Going up the list over here. Caution, great member. Thank you so much for chiming in. Everybody taking the time to watch live on a replay. You guys are absolutely amazing. Brandon, Dominic, great members. Ariel, how are you? Going down the list here. Michael Reed, hope you're doing fantastic. Let's see here. Mr. Nobody, Vinny, NJ, how you doing? Infinite Sketch, Web Loves, you guys are amazing, and I'm really hyped to get into this amazing offseason for the Mets because, I think we've all taken a good period of time now to let it marinate that the year has come to an end, and as much as it's killed me, I know it's killed so many of you not to hear the best post-game jingle in all the land, said some fans, but not all fans. I know that we have a divide there on the platform, but it just feels so raw not even being able to play the jingle for a period of time. Hopefully we have opportunities where we can play this offseason, even though the Mets won't be actively playing games. Webs Love, how are you? I know we're going to get into Soto, Alonso talk for sure, Kyle Tucker, you name it. Again, we're going to be spending all offseason long talking about this free agent options. Jago, how are you? LFGM, baby, let's go get Juan. Dodgers can suck a fat one if they want. Dodgers have won Juan Soto for years. This is not shocking at all. The only reason why they're dropping this today is simply because the World Series going on. The Dodgers have had their eyes on Juan Soto for years, but unlike Shohei Ohtani and the Yoshinobu Yamamoto pursuits, the Dodgers are not going to be able to really go full-fledged involved to the same magnitude that they did for those respective players. Even with all the deferred money in the world, the likelihood of Juan Soto being an LA Dodger next year is pretty slim, if you're asking for my humble opinion, from everything that I've heard, both in the industry since he was dealt there from the Washington Nationals to the Padres, even a little bit before then, with all all the lead up on what Soto was envisioning heading into the offseason, what he's going to be looking for all these years later. And now that we have fast forward all these years later, we have a Mets team that's going to be going out of their way to try to land the superstar who's matching baseballs and making highlight reel heroics there in the postseason for the New York Yankees, and that is Juan Soto. But that's not how we're starting today's discussion, everybody. We're going to start a discussion by getting into some comments from David Stearns, just a couple in particular. I'm not going to go through the entire presser or anything like that, because you got to realize, especially with these early offseason pressers, as much as David Stearns is a fan, as much as I believe a lot of things he's saying, he's going to give you a lot of fluff answers, especially when we talk about certain free agents. Yes, color me surprised. You're going to do everything you can to make sure that you don't lose any leverage whatsoever in negotiations for Alonso, Winker, Manaea, and others, rightfully so. So to anyone that was either taken back at any of Stearns' comments from his presser 3-4 days ago, let me enlighten you on what are some key takeaways here, along with basically how to read through things, because at times when you're hearing your GM or Pobo speak, they're giving you pretty much a nothing burger of an answer, and why exactly are they doing that? I want to clarify some of those things in today's segment, but so let's start by doing exactly that, and how the Mets are destined not only spend, but spend big this offseason. Smash a like and subscribe on his guys chime in. Always appreciate. And let's get into the latest here from David Stearns and his postseason remarks initially. Postseason meaning when the year officially came to an end for the Mets, not playoffs itself, but even when that ended, rather. Let's hear what he had to say just a couple days ago.
Hey, Mets fans. Thank you for all the support and enthusiasm you gave us throughout this entire year. You rode the roller coaster right there with us. You were there every step of the way. And down the stretch, you packed the house and gave the players the encouragement they needed to get us into the playoffs and then have a pretty special run. Collectively, we experienced and we created some really special moments and memories that we'll all take with us for a long time. I hope you guys have a great offseason. The countdown to pitchers and catchers has begun, and looking forward to seeing you there.
It feels really good to see the comments under this post by Mets socials a couple days ago, and just endless positivity. You know, this was night and day from when the Mets first hired David Stearns, and I had to deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of you schmucks going out of your way to say, Wardy, David Stearns is not a needle mover. He did nothing in Milwaukee. He didn't do any big signings, when there's valid and obvious reason as to why exactly that happened. But no less, very, very happy to see David now in the realm with the Mets and having the great first season that he did with Carlos Mendoza and really proving a lot of early doubters wrong. And we went through a lot of trials and tribulations in the 162, but I don't think there's one irrational Mets fan out there that isn't at least confident in David Stearns' abilities and what he's hopefully planning to lead and bring to the Mets, which is one, if not multiple, World Series championships. You have to be optimistic if you're a Mets fan when it comes to David Stearns. If you aren't at this point, you just aren't paying attention. I'm really sorry to hear that, because it just shows how blind you are from reality, because reality is the Mets are set up for now years on end, not just including 2024, heading into 2025. And the hilarious thing to me that I heard from some people was saying the following, how, oh, the Mets don't have a bright future. Like, I'm sorry, are you really smoking that good past over here? Because it's got to be strong for you to say some nonsense like that. Like, let me break it down for a second, everybody. This is a Mets team that in a year where they did not go all in the offseason, like the Dodgers 2 years ago when they allowed Trey Turner to walk. Why? Because they were eyeing Ohtani the offseason after. This is a similar situation for the Mets now a year later, as they don't go all in the offseason. If you're not a Yoshinobu Yamamoto type where you can impact us both short and long term, we're not going to bend our back to try to land you on an overpay. It ain't going to happen. So after a great, very successful 2024, exceeding expectations, I think everyone can agree with there for the most part. Now the Mets head in the offseason this year, headlined by David Stearns, where you have north of $200 million coming off the books. Got Juan Soto, who you've been eyeing up since he was literally a rookie and a 19-year-old there with the Washington Nationals to win it all as soon as he came in the bigs, basically. Just absolutely insane. Mets have had their eyes set on him along with other key free agents this offseason for a number of years now, not just now out of nowhere. So as we look at the approach heading into the offseason for David Stearns and his willingness or lack thereof to spend, let's hear the comments that he said himself just a couple days ago in his presser. Listen up, everybody.
You've got a lot of money coming off the books this year. You're probably operating with more financial flexibility and freedom than maybe you've ever had before as a lead baseball decision maker. What's the opportunity in that, and then what's the challenge in that as well?
Yeah, we've got financial flexibility. It means that pretty much the entirety of the player universe is potentially accessible to us. That's an enormous opportunity. I envision us taking advantage of that opportunity and being aggressive in certain spaces. We also have to recognize that we want to set up our organizational pattern so that we can invest in free agency, invest where we think we need to complement the club on an annual basis. So you're right. We have a lot of money coming off the books. I would expect us to spend some of that, a good portion of that.
That line right there is what I love to hear. I would expect us to not only spend some of that, but a good portion of that. So likely the vast majority of that without the Mets hemorrhaging or really in a bad financial position heading into 2025 and beyond.
To complement our team, to improve our team heading into next year. We're also not going to do anything that hamstrings us in future years and prevents us from continually adding, supplementing to our core group.
So great quote there from David Stearns when speaking on how much money the Mets actively have to work with this offseason. And let's bear in mind, because this is something I think might be easy for some of you guys to forget just because we were spoiled with an owner in Steve Cohen right from the jump, spending big dollars, even though that he didn't spend in areas that ended up being right as we look back at, over the years. But he definitely learned from those trials and tribulations, having different front office regimes and really trying to figure out what is best for the Mets moving forward to have both short-term and long-term success. Over the years, he's now learned that now with David Stearns, a man that he tried to hire as soon as he first became owner by the Mets 3.5-4 years ago now, which is so insane to say when I started this platform and when we got everything going. It's been that long now. But David, this is a man that grew up a diehard Mets fan that had a very limited payroll in a very small market in Milwaukee his entire tenure there as their GM and then president of baseball operations. So mind you, David basically was handcuffed in year one as Mets Pobo with his willingness to spend. Not that he wasn't willing, but more so because Steve Cohen didn't want to spend like a drunken sailor, didn't want to overspend in areas to make the team what would have been, not enough of an upgrade, where we saw their little spending this past offseason while filling in more short-term fill-ins and short-term holes to fill in. That was the best thing that they could have done. Patchwork got the Mets all the way to NLCS Game 6. And as things stand right now, the Mets were the second best team in all baseball this year, because unless the Yankees can make a series out of it in the Bronx, the Mets didn't drop both games there in LA to kickstart the series. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is the Mets exceeded every expectation. They were arguably what many could believe the second best team in the game all year long now, should the World Series conclude and the Dodgers win it fairly comfortably. And now you're telling me you're willing to spend as much as you are. David has to be a kid in a candy shop. If you're a Mets fan right now listening or watching, how do you not feel like a kid in the candy shop? My son Shea, at 4 months of age, who I was playing with right before we getting going here, he's kicking his feet. He's all excited. He's getting happy, and I feel the exact same way as a fan, because they've set themselves up beautifully now for what they can do this offseason. And what the Mets can do this offseason is not only to shore up their rotation and to shore up their lineup, but to really make things a juggernaut for 2025. From in-house options and Mauricio, Jett, Drew Gilbert, which we're going to expand on in a second, to their ability to spend as much as they can in certain areas comfortably, the Mets can comfortably go out there and throw Juan Soto $50+ million a year, and Steve Cohen is going to do anything but lose sleep over it, whereas Steinbrenner is shitting bricks because he's got no money, right? We know the differences between the two organizations. This is where Steve Cohen can not only flex his muscles, but do you guys remember when there was that gentleman's agreement when Steve Cohen first became owner, and how there was supposedly a belief between himself and Steinbrenner of the Yankees that, okay, the Mets are not going to go out of their way to pursue Aaron Judge when he becomes a free agent 2 off seasons ago, because of what the Yankees were willing to do to help make sure Steve Cohen became owner by voting him yes and getting him in. So there was a supposed under-the-table gentleman's agreement a couple of years ago for the Mets to not go out of their way for Aaron Judge, in part because of the positive relationship that the Yankees and the Mets built since Steve Cohen became owner. Fast forward a couple of years later, Yankees and their fans probably aren't ready for the big bad monster that is Steve Cohen and David Stearns coming, looking to land the guy that they have been all drooling over well before any Yankee fan or any man in that front office was doing the same. And I'm not only confident, but I know for certain this is a fact, because I've spoken to people in the Mets organization going back to some in-house options that have been there since Steve Cohen first became owner. Mind you, there's been a a lot of turmoil over the past 4 years since Steve Cohen first became owner of this Mets team. But one thing that has stayed true the entire time has been the Mets' consistent interest and pursuit of Juan Soto. I have heard that Steve Cohen has viewed Juan Soto in a relentless fashion, similar to what he did there with David Stearns, which is why I tried interviewing David for Pobo year after year after year. It was never allowed access, and then we fast forward a couple years later, Stearns is like, I'm not going to work my final year in Milwaukee because I know I want to be with the Mets, and they're really putting me in a tough situation where I can't interview with them because I'm under contract, and I understand that, but I'm not happy about it, so I'm going to step away from the game for a year. He does that. He comes to the Mets, and the Mets get their guy. Tell me why the Mets aren't going to do everything simply in their power to land the guy that has not only been a needle mover for the Yankees, but what Luis Severino famously quoted earlier in the year to be true: without Judge, without Soto, that Yankees team is nothing. And when I look at this Mets team, I look at the depth that they have heading into 2025. I'm sorry, but I have a great confidence level in what Soto could do in a ballpark that he's dominated. He's famously said Citi Field is one of, if not his favorite place to play. He always said how much he wanted to play in New York. He's doing that with the Yankees when that wasn't his decision. What is it going to be for Juan Soto when he properly makes his decision after denying $440 million 3 years ago as a youngster there from the Nationals on a north of a 15-year deal? If he's going to deny those things that early on, he's going to be looking for a bag, and that's where Steve Cohen and the Mets can find themselves as a difference maker. So let me make something clear. This is one of those things when you evaluate how the Mets are pursuing Juan Soto versus the Yankees and trying to bring it back, one thing is clear here. The money is not going to be the problem. It's going to come down to essentially the other factors that the Mets can only control so much. But here's the thing. Juan Soto won a World Series. He's on the cusp of potentially winning his second, if not falling short, not for a lack of effort on his end, but by a collective team effort not getting the job done. He's done everything already. That's exactly why he's prioritizing the big bag more than anything for a long-term deal. This is why Juan Soto, while obviously he enjoyed the nice core group he had there in San Diego, it didn't work out the other day because he knows that he wasn't going to sign long-term there. They weren't going to give him the money he was looking for, and he was going to be going elsewhere. It's going to come down to the dollars. And as much as I know Yankee fans hate the idea of fathoming this, the reality is that the only thing stopping Juan Soto from becoming a Met is Juan Soto having, say, a change in heart and not prioritizing the dollar and believing that being with the Yankees, being in pinstripes to build history there for years going forward is a greater priority. Or going to the Dodgers hypothetically there because all that rumbling happened over the past 24 hours. All I'm saying is when it comes to pursuit of Juan Soto, we are going to be unbelievably consistent in discussing him pretty much every week here until he makes a decision, because he is one of the best, if not the best overall player in the game today, not named Shohei Ohtani. This is an elite talent at the young age of 26 who you can sign for 13 years and have him basically until he's 40. If you want to lock him up for 15 till he's in his early 40s, you can do that knowing how he's going to profile as more of a standalone DH who's just going to tear the cover off baseballs for the next decade plus. That is what makes Juan Soto so special. And to further expand on Juan Soto, here's some comments that I just want to share with each and every one of you. And then we're going to talk about some other free agents for the Mets that are separate from Juan Soto, that are not external options, but are internal options. Give me 1 second, everybody, because that thing has decided not to pause on me. I did want to pull up a really good quote here, an issue from Luis Severino earlier this season. And I like Jared Carrabis. For those that don't know, Jared covers the Red Sox with his Section 10 podcast and just covers MLB wide as a whole. Does a great job. And Carrabis, a notorious Yankee hater, so it makes sense they tweeted this out earlier today. Juan Soto and Giancarlo Stanton combined this postseason, .313 average, a .408 on base percentage, a .723 slug, a 1,131 OPS, 10 home runs, 23 RBIs, 14 extra base hits, and a 16.3 K percentage. Disgusting numbers, literally elite stuff. That is what is going to get you in the World Series, let alone dominating in the World Series. The other Yankees have, with at least one postseason plate appearance, a .205 average, a .311 on base percentage, a .293 slug, a .604 OPS, 5 home runs, 21 RBIs, 15 extra base hits, and 24.3% on the K strikeout percentage. You only have two good hitters, as Luis Severino famously quoted earlier this year before facing the Yankees, and he's not wrong. It's just hilarious to see this quote back up because he's 1,000% true, and regardless of what Severino's future holds for the Mets, we know that this is accurate, and we know that the Mets are absolutely going to be a team that's going to be relentless in their pursuit of Juan Soto. And listen, this was the same Juan that just did this literally yesterday. Just an absolute new cannon, being the lone man to try to get any offense going for the Yankees when they otherwise had nothing else going. You know, this is a Juan Soto that had the biggest home run heroic imaginable to walk it off against the Guardians to secure their ability to go out to get to the World Series after dominating there in the ALCS, similar to Francisco Lindor's grand slam against the Phillies. Like, they're just, and Pete Alonso's huge home run against the Brewers. Like, those are moments that make you, and you got to make sure that you can be able to handle a big market and handle a big moment and handle a spotlight. Juan Soto has checked off every single box imaginable for the Mets. And because of the fact that he has checked off every single box for the Mets, they will be doing everything in their power to try to land him. And I understand that there's one big counter outside of the Yankees and their fans, being the Yankees and their fans, not believing for a second the Mets have a shot at landing Soto. Dodger fans saying, okay, let's bring on everyone. Let's add our final infinity stone here and have the biggest gauntlet imaginable in MLB history if they don't have it already. But let's not forget, when it comes to this pursuit and when it comes to Juan Soto and when it comes to this offseason, it's going to be about what he wants. What he wants. We can all fixate in our head and think that, oh, we know for certain how things are going to be. It's going to be this way. It's going to be that way. No, we don't. We don't know how certain things are going to be. What we know is what we know right now, and everything has pointed towards this being a potential reality. So once we have a resolution, once we have further reporting, we will break it down as we always do. But I know this is going to be one of those topics that's going to be tiring to many fairly fast this offseason. I apologize, but buckle up because it's not ending anytime soon. Juan Soto's talk is going to be endless, is going to be relentless. And the final thing I'll add here on Juan Soto before we talk about some internal free agents that David Stearns has comments on, some external free agents as well that the Mets are pursuing outside of Juan Soto, and then Ronnie Mauricio, Jett, Williams, and one others. But I did just want to reiterate just how good Juan Soto is. Just for any fan out there that's saying, okay, you know what? The big gripe, and this is my initial point I meant to make, I actually switched up and I just said how it's going to be up to Soto in reality. That was me circling because I lost my train of thought. But what I initially was trying to say there on the topic of Soto here is that this is a guy that we can look at and say all you want. Okay, you know, why should the Mets go out of their way to try to land a guy when they just went literally 2 games away from the dance in a year where they didn't spend big in the offseason, where they didn't have to be relying on giving a guy north of $50 million a year to have success? There is a realm where the Mets don't land Juan Soto and have plenty of success without him, and that is a great possibility for sure. But what Juan Soto brings, even at the high dollar amount he's going to likely command of $600+ million this offseason, you're getting a surefire guaranteed thing. He's proven everything. He has literally done everything. The only potential risk that you make is, one, committing so much into one player that you might not be happy about it down the road if you're not getting immediate success. 2, Juan Soto, once he gets the bag, becomes stubborn at an early age and goes on to age terribly of a contract, which is so hard to fathom, even with his personality being fairly controversial depending on who you talk to in the industry. All he knows is that Juan Soto is everything and then some for any team that would have the privilege of landing him, and the Mets have been right at the forefront of trying to land this guy for such a long period of time now. 41 home runs, 128 runs scored, 109 RBIs, a 288 average, a 419 on base percentage, a 569 slug for a well over 1,000 OPS, a 180 WRC plus, which means he's 80% better than the average batter in baseball, a career high 8.1 WAR, which means he himself was a factor in a basically 8+ wins for the Yankees alone. So to say, you know, he's important is an understatement for the Yankees and their future beyond 2024. But Mets fans, I'm going to ask you a simple question before I get on to our other hard-hitting topics that we have in today's discussion. 1, where do you think Juan Soto is going to land this offseason? And 2, how much do you want Juan Soto as a Mets fan? Are you in favor of pursuing him? Are you against pursuing him? Because the Mets pursuing him has already started, right? That's been going on. This is the same Mets team that under a previous front office offered Francisco Alvarez, Mark Vientos, and I believe Ronnie Mauricio, among others, in a massive trade package to Mike Rizzo and the Nationals 2.5 years ago. And Mike Rizzo said no, simply put, he didn't want to trade Soto in the division. Understandably so. He goes to the Padres, doesn't do enough with the Padres. They don't make the playoffs last year like the Mets. He gets sent to the Yankees, and the rest is history. He's their missing piece. Like, just the thought of Juan Soto batting right towards the top with Francisco Lindor, at right either ahead or right behind polar bear Pete Alonso, and then you have all the other options in the depth of your lineup. I mean, I'm sorry, like, the Yankees made the dance, I understand that, but there's not one Mets fan here that would simply be firmly thinking that the Mets wouldn't have a shot against the Yankees, and they are in the dance right now. Similar, the Dodgers are the three-headed monster in Judge, Soto there, and standing with Ohtani, who unfortunately had that shoulder injury, but he's going to try to play it out. I'm wishing him well. Don't have any ill will against Shohei, just sucks that he torched us, but he did what he needed to do. They are also in Mookie and Freddie. All those guys are dominant at three-headed monster, but the Yankees, without those three guys, just don't have the quality depth in the lineup the way the Dodgers do. They don't have the Tommy Edmonds. They don't have the Max Muncies. They have none of that whatsoever. And they're so reliant on that long ball that they don't have it. They have little to nothing. And I think that's going to further expose them in this series. And that's why I firmly expect the Dodgers to win the World Series at this obvious rate. You know, Soto is a guy that I think is going to be getting at least $600 million at this rate. Some people are saying 700 plus. I think going 700 would be unbelievably foolish for a guy who can't even pitch for you. I firmly believe that. But I also know it's not my money. And if it isn't going to financially, strain the Mets and their spending going forward, I don't really care all that much on really how much the dollar amount is at the end of the day, because I'm not Steve Cohen. I'm not the guy worth $22 billion or so. So if anyone's going to be able to take a little smidge of a percentage out of that big overall net worth, it's going to be Steve Cohen more than anyone else. But all right, guys, we talked plenty there on Juan Soto. Want to see your further comments on them live and on replay. Spam them, as well as smash that like and subscribe on if you haven't already, guys. That is greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much in advance for doing exactly that. But before we talk a bit more about David Stearns' remarks that we have here in regards more so with in-house options, whether that's going to be guys in Jesse Winker, Pete Alonso, and others, we're going to hear his comments on them here shortly. And then from there, we're going to talk a bit more about other free agent targets such as Roki Sasaki and others, and Ronnie Mauricio, because I have a big update on Ronnie that we all know about over the past couple days, Jett Williams, Drew Gilbert, and many others. But before we break down more on this, just a quick word from our amazing sponsor that you guys and gals know very well. That is our amazing friends here at BetUS. BetUS has you covered with all your sports betting needs, everybody. And as we head into Monday Night Football, because I know my Jets fans out there want nothing to do with any betting picks, and that's fine. I apologize to all I'm a Steelers fan, so basically all my followers that are football fans and Mets fans, you probably hate me this past week, and you're probably going to hate me tomorrow because I'm absolutely hammering the Steelers to cakewalk against the Giants every single day of the week. Even the Steelers are minus 260 there at home with Russell Wilson doing a great first impression as our quarterback over Justin Fields last weekend. Can't say enough great things about how I'm liking how my Steelers are playing right now. I know I offended some of you guys by saying that, but if we're going to put our bias aside as a sports bettor, say you're a Giants or a Jets fan, put it aside. The Steelers here are really looking like they're going to have themselves a big game here against the Giants. So I'm going to be putting 50 down to win me 19-23. That's going to be 70-23 total just for the Steelers to win outright here on the money line. And you guys can place your bets too with our amazing friends at BetUS by using Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way YouTube get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125 on your second, and 125 on your third, up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. And we are absolutely hammering here my Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, I believe we're 5-2. Our two losses were both nail biters this season as well. Nothing to really scoff at. One was against the Colts, and one was so dramatic and still pisses me off. The other was against the Cowboys after insane rain delay this year, which again pissed me off too. But for my Steelers, they've exceeded expectations. I'm really liking how they're looking. Again, Russell Wilson and George Pickens, what a combo that was. Our defense is going to hold it down. TJ Watt was like a non-factor last week against the Jets and didn't matter. He's going to be a factor on Monday Night Football against Daniel Jones and the Giants. I'm locked in. I'm ready. I hope you football fans are too. To my Giants fans, I was not trying to offend anybody. I wish the Giants and the Jets well, just not when they're facing my Steelers. It's as simple as that. I hope you guys understand. We're going to confirm that bet. Shout out BetUS, folks. Check them out today at betus.com.pa. But now let's hop back into this one, everybody, and let's talk more here on what David Stearns had to say about our internal free agent options and Pete Alonso and Jesse Winker. And let's start with Jesse Winker before getting on to Polar Bear Pete Alonso, because I know he's more the polarizing topic between the two. You can see me now, Dominic. I'm glad. I don't know what took so long, Dominic, but I'm glad you can see me now. K-Dog, how you doing, baby? Happy to have you in here as always. What do I like the idea of the Mets releasing Alonso, taking Vladdy next offseason? It isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen in that manner. Vladdy's an amazing player for sure that I wouldn't be opposed to trying to land an offseason from now should he hit the free agent market, but the Mets are going to try to keep Alonso before we get to something of that magnitude. I feel pretty confident saying that. Here's David Stearns on Jesse Winker.
Anything new this year about Jesse Winker, and what's the interest level on maybe bringing him back?
Yeah, Wink did a great job for us. Was having a really good year in Washington, came over here, adjusted to a little bit of a new role. We asked him to play a little bit more outfield. He did that. When we asked him to DH, he certainly did that. He understood he wasn't going to play against lefties and was ready off the bench when we needed him. I appreciated the fire. I think our fan base appreciated the fire. And yeah, absolutely. Another player who contributed to our team and who we'll certainly stay in touch with.
So those are the remarks there about Jesse Winker. Jesse, who I'm not going to lie, guys, it is still absolutely sitting rent-free in my head that he did not start games 3 and 4. I know I said I'd shut up about that. I get over that, but I'm not. It's living rent-free all off-season long thus far. I think it's going to for a while. If you guys chimed into our in-game and post-game live show, I literally some of the biggest live coverage for the Mets all in season and postseason long here on YouTube on WardyNYM. And I was so adamant from pregame of game 3, Winker non the lineup, and it still pisses me off to this day because I was so right from the start, and unfortunately Mendy was so wrong, and that stains. But listen, a pass is a pass. This is now, and Jesse Winker needs to be a Met for 2025. When you talk about the vibes, when you talk about the appreciation, like, let's just go down the list briefly here, folks. Jesse Winker had himself not only tremendous home run and triple heroics, multiple triples in the playoffs for the Mets this year, mind you. He knew exactly how to step up in the moment. Winker's at-bats were quality almost every single time up there. When Zach Wheeler against the Phillies, was dotting the corners up and in, he was the only guy to take and the only guy to get walks. When Winker was also dealing with a lot of, just nasty pitching from the Dodgers as well, and the Phillies, he was the only one that just felt calm, cool, and composed more often than not. He barreled baseballs, he looked for his pitches up and in, and he got them big time, and he ripped those bad boys for home runs or triples. Jesse slamming the helmet down, screaming at fans in the best way possible. Like, this was the best trade deadline acquisition on the offensive end, not named Javi Baez, since Yoenis Cespedes. And it's better than Baez in the sense that while Javi had better regular season numbers, let's not forget Javi was tremendous, like a 300-plus average, a 900-plus OPS, stealing bags, elite, just thumbs down, that pissed off people. We all know the drama there. But Jesse provided drama in the best way possible, where it wasn't towards the Mets after it was for endless years during his time with the Reds and then the Seattle Mariners. No, it was against opposing teams. It was to be the bad mother effing Mets again, to have the 86 vibes a little bit, to get a little hard-nosed, get a little nasty, to get off that blue-collar feel like you just don't give a shit. You're going to go out in bananas it's a party out there at Citi Field every time. Jesse Winker adopted everything that you could hope for in a trade deadline acquisition. Not only his quality splaying time in corner outfield and DH there in the platoon against mainly right-handed pitching, but he could hit lefty if you really need him out there in certain situations. Jesse Winker made it abundantly clear, emotional with his season coming to an end, how much he loved and appreciated the Mets and how much he'd love to come back. I think that feeling is mutual, not only amongst us fans, but also David Stearns, who knows Jesse during their time there, not only as rivals from the Reds to the Brewers in the NL Central, but this is also the same Jesse Winker that a short stint just a year plus ago in Milwaukee. So David has some familiarity there to begin with. Now he's stronger one now. He knows how much the fans love him. And Jesse Winker, what stands out so much to me is not only the vibes, it's not only the elite hitting that we've seen in high leverage, but it actually does go in hand with that. It is the high leverage. It is the runners in scoring position. It is the 2-out hitting. When the Mets acquired Jesse Winker, the trade deadline, he was one of the best hitters in all the National League, and all those high leverage numbers, polar opposite of what Polar Bear Pete Alonso was at the time. So to see things fast forward into Jesse Winker come here after hitting that home run off of Adrian Hauser and the Mets there on the 11 o'clock 4th of July game, which still pisses me off just a little bit because Adrian should have been cut well before that. All I'm here to tell you is that Jesse Winker is everything that you could want in a Met. He fits the Mets perfectly next season, and you can never have an abundance of options. So even if the Mets sign him and then realize that he's a little bit more boxed out than they thought heading into the year because of maybe bigger moves with Juan Soto and others, that's okay. You worry about it then. Bring Jesse back on a nice shorter-term contract. There's no reason why he wouldn't want to return unless the Mets somehow burn a bridge this offseason, which I don't foresee to happen. Mets fans, by a show of hands watching live on a replay, would you like to see Jesse Winker back? Because I sure as hell would, to say the least. Such a tremendous player. Tremendous player. I know we have some people in the chat that says, Wardy, I'm a close friend with Soto's family. He's almost certainly staying with the Yankees. I'm not going to lie, you're not the first person I've interacted with over the past year plus has said that they're close with Soto, that have said similar sentiment. I've also heard the same about how, he was never going to come to New York, and I also heard how he was never going to be leaving San Diego. So again, while I appreciate that input, that's going to be taken with a grain of salt, just like everything else. Well, for the most part, until we find out more concrete reporting leading up to Soto and his decision making. 1,200 with a $5 donation. Thank you so much. Whatever we do, don't hate it all on the Japanese pitchers. Just sign Soto, Fried, and the God King Sasaki. I tend to agree on Sasaki, especially if you know you know. 1,200, love you, my man. Thank you so much for the donation as always. How about Jose Iglesias? I've said this time and time again. Jose needs to come back, and he needs to come back in a similar fashion to Winker, where even if the role is slightly lesser than what it was this year, next year, because of younger guys and because of other offseason moves, you do that. Because Jose Iglesias, like Jesse Winker, was such a vibes guy. The Mets would have went nowhere without Jose Iglesias. He was their most valuable player this year, not named Francisco Lindor. That's 1,000% a fact. Between his elite play for a half a season plus, is one of the best actually contact second base hitters the Mets have ever had the position. He had a historic run over 82 game pace. He was really, really good. And Iglesias and Jose in a lesser role next year a little bit, right? Maybe starts out there getting consistent time at second, especially if the Mets are able to trade a Jeff McNeil, for example, that we talked about in a previous video on 5 Mets who won't return for 2025. Check that out if you haven't already, everybody. That did really well. You guys, we were all pretty much under a very similar mindset, which I appreciate. Every year, I think we've gotten better and better on doing those videos and kind of being rational about who we think could be parted with versus who's staying. And Iglesias is a perfect fit to return because you have Luis Angel Acuna, you have Jett Williams, and you have, to an extent, Ronnie Mauricio that we're going to talk about here shortly. But all these guys are in-house middle infield options for the Mets to consider, and those are all guys that you would love to have a veteran presence outside of Francisco Lindor around to help continue the transition at second base. So if you continue the growth and development of Acuna and Williams at minimum, you're going to want a nice veteran leader like an Iglesias to really be a helping hand the way that he was all year long this year. So I think for those reasons alone, you should bring back Jose Iglesias, and then you have all the obvious factors, and not only the OMG, of having more singles hit for next season, have more things to rally around, but you just have a guy that wants to be here, and we know how much David Stearns has prided himself, that we heard from his end of the season presser, how they really do prioritize people that want to be here, guys that have an embodiment that knows what it means to be a Met, that can handle a big market, that want to be a part of these runs. Those things are special, and they don't come falling off trees. Stearns famously said, we've denied many opportunities to acquire players because we felt that they weren't the proper clubhouse or team fit. Jose Iglesias and Jesse Winker are a million times out of a million times the best fit for this Mets team from a clubhouse perspective. And then you add in the great play that they have as offensive weapons, even at this point in their respective careers. Bring them both back. That can't be understated enough. All right, now, guys, let's hear what he has to say about one polar bear, Pete Alonso.
So we make the best choice.
What is your appetite to retain Pete, and how much, if at all, did the last 3 weeks maybe change or alter your opinion of him?
Look, Pete's a great Met. He was right out there right before I came in. I told him I was about to answer a lot of questions about him. He told me good luck. He's a great Met. I hope we have him back. I think we both understand this is a process, and everyone's got their own interests. And Pete deserves to go out into the free agent market and see what's out there, and then ultimately make the best choice for him and his family.
So big takeaway from that presser is exactly what I expected it to be from the start. David Stearns said how much he's a fantastic Met and polar bear, just as he did when he first came here as president of baseball operations all those months ago. And David, and he made it abundantly clear, we obviously would like, Alonso to be back. That goes without saying. However, we understand that there are other factors. Alonso needs to prioritize what's best for him and his family, and this is a situation that's going to play out. So, one, a Pete Alonso decision is not going to happen in the early off seasons, more than likely. We're not going to see really the results of Alonso for probably a decent period of time, knowing he's a Scott Boras client, and that will likely be Alonso's demise. This is a big year for Alonso in the case of not only him reaching the biggest bag he'll ever get as a player, more than likely, but also trying to make sure he's not snake bitten by Scott Boras the way that so many other free agents in recent years have. Now holding out too long for the biggest contract, when in reality you have to settle for a short-term deal, maybe with a second-year option before hitting the market again, because you swung and missed on what you were looking for. Pete Alonso currently projects, based on his value from last season and overall, to get right around a $170+ million contract, which is what the Mets offered him as a contract extension there a year plus ago under Billy Epler around the trade deadline. At the time, the polar bear said no, and now he betted on himself. And while betting on himself, had the worst regular season of his career, while also having playoff heroics that have now really skyrocketed his stock. Because listen, as much as Alonso really frustrated all of his fans, including myself big time this regular season, when we remember when we did the video earlier this year on the Pete Alonso problem, because he was so god-awful in runners scoring position, high leverage, you name it, just horrendous across the board, when it's so night and day from his career norms. Even in 2023, down season for the Mets, and for Alonso to a degree, still had tremendous numbers in all those respective areas. Not the case this year because he couldn't handle the pressure. Now we fast forward into postseason play. Listen, guys, I'm going to be blunt. As much as I hate sitting through 162 games of my top slugger being mediocre, by God, do I love it when my top slugger steps the hell up when we need him to most in postseason play. So I'm sorry. Call it recency bias, call it whatever the hell you want to call it, but Polar Bear proved everything and then some, his meaning and his value to the Mets as soon as he drove that baseball opposite field off of Devin Williams against the Brewers. That changed the complexion of everything. Then he made it 3 straight playoff games with an opposite field home run. The massive early shot there against Flaherty and the Dodgers there for a massive Game 5 victory at Citi Field, finally showing up for Mets fans before their year officially came to an end. The Polar Bear, who has been the embodiment of what it means to be a Met, who has been a homegrown town, a home run heroic town, leading the way in home runs, RBIs, every single statistic you can imagine. And now you have to bear in mind that this would be a Polar Bear Pete Alonso without the pressure of it being a walk year anymore. Think about that. This is likely the worst offensive year we're going to get from the Polar Bear as a Met should he return to the Mets for a decent stretch. The reason why I feel confident saying that is he will not have the contract pressure in 2025 and beyond if he's locked up to a 5 to 7+ year deal. It won't happen because he won't have that pressure anymore. You guys get what I'm saying? So when you put this simple 2 and 2 together, think about everything Alonso has done in non-contract years and think about what he just did in the postseason. That trumps everything and then some that he did throughout the regular season this season. That alone is why the Mets need to make sure that they try their best to bring back Polar Bear Pete Alonso, but also making sure that they do it at the right price. Because as much as I love Pete, as much as each and every one of you certainly do, we talked about him greatly in our top 5 video a couple days ago on guys who won't return. Not that he can't return, but it's a big question mark still. And the question mark with Alonso is, one, how much does he want to be here? How much does he want to stay with the Mets? Does he want to be in this market still? Or what does he want to prioritize potentially what we've heard rumblings on, whether it's going out to Texas or what have you? You know, what does he want to do? What is best for him and his family right now? Does he want the media pressure anymore? Does he want that nonsense? Or does he want to kind of get away, get a nice bag, but be in a smaller market where he knows he doesn't need to deal with the daily nonsense that us fans and media give him? So there's a lot of layers to this, but I also think about how guys like Alonso typically project. Now, Alonso's a little bit of a hard one to gauge because he's like the cream of the crop of guys when you think of, okay, don't get offended by what I'm trying to say, folks. Just bear in mind what I'm trying to say here. We've seen endless, and I mean endless, at best average defenders at first base, subpar defenders, and DHs. And they really, really tail off 4 or 5 years of their career because they don't properly adjust with the game. And their offensive numbers are more inflated because of juice baseballs like throughout up until 2019 plus, and then bam, baseballs change. Balls are falling short on the warning track. Things just aren't going in their manner. And Alonso is a guy that does project as one that you don't want to give a long-term big AAV contract to. Nothing about him projects in that manner, as a matter of fact. When you look at his defense at first base, you look at how he projects more as a standalone DH in the second half of his career, those are things that the Mets have to bear in mind, because Alonso's not one of these guys where if you lock him up for 2 to 250, where you're going to necessarily get the exact turnout. Now, I could be wrong. That could end up being a big bargain should he have deep playoff runs for the Mets in the years going forward. But I think the Mets and David Stearns, they just need to make sure, and they've been, that they have this fine line in the sand where we want you back, Pete. We really do, but we do not want to bring you back at a significant overpay when we know that we can replace your power to an extent, not only starting with Juan Soto, but potentially others in the next 2 off seasons. That's something you have to bear in mind. Mark Vientos' ability to potentially shift there to first base is something that I'm sure that they're considering between that and DH. There's a lot of avenues, but simply put, do we all want Polar Bear back? A lot of us want Polar Bear back. However, if he doesn't return, I wish him the absolute best. It's going to crush me to see it happen, but I've seen all my favorite Mets in recent years not name Lindor basically be part of with DeGrom especially, so it's like it would just be another thing that I have to deal with in my fandom, and I know I'll get through it. Pete, love you, wishing you well. Hope you have a fantastic offseason. But when it comes to Juan Soto and that pursuit, that very well could be what trumps the Mets from bringing back Alonso. Not that they can't sign both, but you have to ask yourself, if you're David Stearns, if you are Carlos Mendoza, if you are Steve Cohen, do you prioritize Juan Soto more than your in-house option and Pete Alonso? Because you might offend him. You take that risk, but at the same time, if you don't go out your way to try to land Juan Soto, that might be the biggest regret you have for the next 10 to 15 years. As great as Alonso is, he does not touch what Juan Soto is on a daily basis, nor will he ever, probably even at the peak of his career, if we haven't seen it yet in the Polar Bear. So this is a question I have for you all, everybody. Which player between the two do you think makes most sense to prioritize right from the get-go this offseason? I'm telling you right now, it's more than likely going to be Juan Soto as that priority, while bearing in mind Alonso's fluent situation with Scott Boras and seeing what happens there. If the Mets have luck with Soto, odds are they may still have luck with Alonso as well, both of them being Scott Boras represented clients, but you have to worry about certain teams like the Chicago Cubs in particular, who I think are going to be looking to throw out a big bags, a big overpay for one Pete Alonso come this offseason. So we'll see what happens, everybody. I'm really excited to get into the ins and outs of how this offseason is going to go for them, but rest assured, the Polar Bear, as much as they want back, he's not a slam dunk guarantee, and we will talk about this fluid situation as we find out more updates throughout the course of the offseason. So now that we talked a bit about those guys, let's also talk a bit about some other updates here, folks. And before we talk about Sasaki, let's get into the latest here on the following. As you guys can see from Michael Mayer, does a great job of Metsmerize. He did note that Ronnie Mauricio, unfortunately, had a slower than expected rehab with his injury back in the Winter League last year in the Dominican Winter League. So bad that the guy hasn't even started baseball activities yet. Guys, it's been basically an entire year. It's been almost a calendar year, and Ronnie Mauricio still isn't playing baseball. We saw Ronnie Mauricio not long ago. Hold on, let me see. We saw Ronnie Mauricio not long ago taking some, just back in September, he was doing some workouts and things of that nature, but he still isn't on the field. He isn't taking rounders. He's not taking hacks consistently. So the thought of, okay, Ronnie Mauricio will be a factor for us next season, he might. But at this rate, it might not be until kind of, a little bit of a later bloomer as we already get into spring training and get into them the start of the regular season. Mauricio looked very good in a short sample size for the Mets, and then he tailed off throughout the last number of games in 2023, like Alvarez and every other Met that had nothing to play for at the time. But Ronnie is an electric young talent that many believed, and I heard this, I kid you not, from literally an active player's mouth himself last offseason that I heard, one-on-one closed door, that they fully expected Ronnie Mauricio to lead the way at the hot corner to begin spring training heading into the season. The belief is that it was Ronnie's job to lose at third base, apparently. It goes to Brett Beatty because Ronnie goes down with injury in the Dominican Winter League. Then Mark Vientos takes it down. The rest is history, everything that had to happen. But Mauricio is a very interesting guy to bear in mind for next year because he has a lot of what feels like potentially plus talent, not only from his ability to steal bags, with his great reach at 6'3", 6'4". He looks like he's 6'5", really filled out. Tremendous power. Let's not forget the home run heroics he had in spring training a year plus ago, and then that we saw that transfer into a great regular season there in Syracuse with the Mets, which led to his call-up. Mauricio has a lot of ability to also handle potentially second or third base, could potentially go in the corner outfield, even though that, he has his ways to go. So Mauricio, I've been asked constantly over the past couple months, what is the latest going on with Ronnie Mauricio? What is his future looking like? Well, here it is, folks. This is the latest for Ronnie Mauricio and his future. He unfortunately is yet to get going with baseball activities, but once he does that, he will be a big young talent for the Mets and David Stearns in particular to have a key eye on heading into spring training. I really hope that Ronnie can get everything regimented and ready to go, because he's a guy that can play second base. He's a guy that can play third if you need him to, and he's a guy that just adds more options in a great way for this Mets team heading into 2025. So Ronnie Mauricio, continue with your recovery, my friend. I'm glad that you're working out and doing those things, but we got to get you back and having baseball activities. It sucks it hasn't happened yet, but you can never take tears, those type of injuries lightly, and I understand that. So that's the latest here with Ronnie Mauricio. So now let's talk about Drew Gilbert, Mets top outfield prospect. If you guys didn't see it, Drew Gilbert made what we saw in history. He became the first player to challenge a check swing there at the professional level. This is just one of many things that we can expect. This is Drew and Jett Williams. Both are playing in the Arizona Fall League.
The batter is challenging the call swing.
Challenge his check swing, and they showed there on the Jumbotron that he was in fact correct. He was not wrong. He did not surpass there the line for it to be a check swing, so they called a no swing, and that challenge draws in his favor. Why is this so important to note, everybody? This is the start of the game.
Batter is challenging the call of swing.
Umpires accountable for being a schmuck and as god-awful as they tend to be, especially there when you're going down to first base or third base and they're just having to call completely wrong. That's the start of many, because we also see in the Arizona Fall League as well as the minor leagues, they have been using, obviously, robot umps, and that has had a great success. They have been challenging.
Batter is challenging the call of swing.
Club over the next couple of years, but they're just not fully ready yet, so they're first testing them out at the minor leagues and different pro levels, including the Arizona Fall League. As you see. Jett Williams, guys. Speaking of Jett the Met, look at this, everybody. Jett Williams had himself a towering 20-foot home run last night there for the Arizona Fall League. It's probably really hard to see because this camera angle and just everything about this camera angle is terrible, as you'd expect for Arizona Fall League. But it's a dead center, center right shot by Jett Williams, who missed the majority, unfortunately, of the regular minor league season for the Mets in Syracuse because of a wrist injury that they try to push away that he didn't need surgery. Then he gets surgery, and then bam, here he is, and he's ready to go. And Jett is a guy that's looking for a big 2025. Just like Drew Gilbert, two guys that David Stearns was expecting to soar in the minor leagues this year. Let's see. Oh, you guys can't hear my audio. How's the audio, everybody? Can't hear your audio. Did I hear? Wait, hold on, everybody. Do you guys hear me correctly? Before I continue on, you said my audio drowned out. I just want to know if that's continuing or not. Let me know real quick, everybody. Then I'll continue yapping. I just don't want to keep yapping if my audio is an issue at the moment. When I play the clips, it drowns out my audio. Yes, that is correct. You're not wrong. And I apologize, though. I should have made note of that earlier. Okay, as long as that's muted, we're fine. The audio should be good to go. Okay, video is drowning me out. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the updates. That's what I appreciate. Thank you, guys, for, not BSing me and just telling me right away if something's not going as planned. But as we see there, guys, with Jett Williams, Drew Gilbert, both had very respectful days. They are a 2-for-4 day for Jett Williams. Drew, who hit a home run a couple days ago in the Arizona Fall League, is looking good. But these are both guys that, again, went through a lot of ailments throughout the course of the 2024 rather, and they're looking to really step up here in 2025. Jett Williams is going to be looking to break camp for the Mets right out of spring training. So will Drew Gilbert, and that's exactly why one of the guys I talked about in our 5 Mets who won't return video yesterday is simply Harrison Bader. Why? Because Tyrone Taylor's still under contract, and Drew Gilbert, tearing the cover off the baseball, playing strong defense, he's going to be looking to impact the Mets greatly next season. Listen, guys, you know how we had this huge breakout with Mark Vientos this season? Imagine that breakout now for 2025, this time with Drew Gilbert and or Jett Williams, and on the outside looking and knocking on the door because he's going to be starting the year in AAA and looking for a big year is my guy Ryan Clifford, who is a part of that Drew Gilbert trade for Justin Verlander. And speaking of Justin Verlander, Mets are off the hook for him, obviously, this offseason, which is amazing. That's in part why they have so much money coming off the books. The Mets are just really set up well now as we head in the offseason. And as we head in the offseason, everybody, there is one man the Mets have already been reportedly linked to outside of what we know in Roki Sasaki, among others, in Juan Soto, and that is, yes, Roki Sasaki. So as we see from this gorgeous graphic that my amazing editor Jacob chefed up and even made the thumbnail for me. Hope you guys like that new thumbnail. We're going to be incorporating some different thumbnail looks this offseason. Not for everything, because I like to keep things a very certain way, but we're going to mix things up a little bit. You did a great job. But this graphic, Mets reportedly committed significant resources to scout MPB star pitcher Roki Sasaki. We did a video on this with around 10,000 views a couple days ago, so check that out if you haven't already, everybody. But this is what I have to say on Sasaki before we get on to my closing remarks. And any comments, questions you guys got for me, relay them in the chat right now, so that way I can go up to your comments and answer as many as I can before we reach the hour mark of the show. Mets should trade for Mike Trout. No, they shouldn't, Walker. Thank you for the donation, but Mike Trout is the last guy that the Mets should have interest in, considering his back is not going to get any better, and sadly, the best years of Mike Trout already have happened. It is a career that's going to go down as one of the best first half careers in history, and the second half will have a lot of controversy that honestly won't be far off from the controversy that goes in hand with someone like David Wright to an extent. Obviously, Mike, the better overall player, but you guys get what I'm trying to say there. Thank you for that donation, though. But guys, let's talk about Roki Sasaki here for a second. If you have any comments, questions for me, relay them in the chat so I can answer them after a breakdown here on Roki. But let me start out by saying, as I said, all in season long, postseason on as well. There should not be one Mets fan that believes that Roki Sasaki is more likely to come to the Mets than the Dodgers should he be posted this offseason. So I would like to start this conversation by prefacing that, because I do not want Mets fans to get their hopes up to the extent that we did with Yoshinobu Yamamoto last offseason. Now listen, if we go through the same tactics again, if we're flying our asses to Japan, if we're doing these meetings that we hear with Steve Cohen and David Stearns, then yes, we're going to talk about it. Yes, we're naturally going to get our hopes up again, but we'll worry about that should we get there. We've learned from the Kodai Senga sweepstakes. We've learned, let's see, let me just do something real quick. We've learned from the mistakes of not Kodai Senga, but Yoshinobu Yamamoto on, getting to invest in something that's sadly falling short. Not that the Mets did anything for lack of effort. They had everything on the table. It's just hard to say no. The Dodgers and literally Team Japan, headlined by Shohei Ohtani there. But Roki, for those that aren't aware, is coming off of a tremendous season there in the MPB, as you guys can see as follows. 2024 numbers: a 22-year-old right-hander, a 2.3 ERA, a 0.2 home run per nine, a 2.6 walks per nine, a 10.5 K per nine, and just over 1 whip. This is a guy that's touching north of 100 on the gun with his fastball, north of 100 on his disgustingly nasty, his sinker or splitty, one of the two, because I'm butchering on him, and just the slide piece that touches the high 90s. He did fluctuate with his velocity a lot this year, which is something to bear in mind. Roki, at only 22 years of age, touching 103 on the gun. He's inevitably going to be getting Tommy John in the future in his career. We know that once, if not multiple times. So that is something that teams bear in mind, should be posted. If he's posted, it'll be on a minor league deal. It's not on a league minimum deal. The Mets can't sign him to a massive on contract because he's still technically under contract and will need to get like an exemption to be parted with by his team there in the MPB, which is not an easy thing to do. All these rules changed with Shohei Ohtani back when he left the MPB there for the Angels in 2018. So as we fast forward now to present day with Roki Sasaki, he has everything that we could want. He fits the short and long-term vision. He's a younger, more dominant Yoshinobu Yamamoto with, yes, more injury risk right now. I don't even know if I want to say that, because Yamamoto had a lot of ailments throughout the course of the year too. So I can't say that's entirely true. All I will say is that Roki Sasaki, he is destined, should he hit the bigs, for the Dodgers or the Padres to be 1 and 2 on the list before getting to the Mets. Where the Mets can separate themselves isn't money, and that's why it's harder to envision him coming here. This is not about going to the highest bidder in this situation. It's foreign. It's different than others, including Yoshinobu Yamamoto becoming the highest paid pitcher in Major League Baseball. The Mets threw that to a guy. They would do that to the same here in Sasaki if they could, but because they can't, that also keeps them a little strung up on their ability to actually land the guy. So Dodgers, Padres, these teams are going to be pushing hard for him for sure. Kevin says the guy that had to go, 6 games in the NLCS against them? Leave it to Dodgers fans to still not be satisfied up 2-0 in the World Series, but I have to chime into a Mets chat because they're really, really depressed and down in the dumps. Also, Kevin said earlier in the chat, which I want to enlighten heavily, why would Juan Soto consider coming to the Mets over the Dodgers when the Dodgers are the Dodgers? Well, it's going to come down to money. Doesn't matter how much the Dodgers win. Outside of a Mickey Mouse reign in 2020, the Dodgers are finally on the cusp of winning a real reign for the first time in forever. And I commend them, and they deserve that greatly should that be the case. But Juan Soto is not going to prioritize simply reigns. If he was doing that from the beginning, his approach heading into this offseason all the years ago would not be what it is currently. He would have signed that contract with the Nationals, and things would have went from there. Because the Nationals are already set up now to have potentially playoff runs as soon as next season. They're going to be pursuing him, as are other teams. The Mets view Juan Soto the way the Dodgers viewed Shohei Ohtani last offseason. That's the best way to explain it for Dodger fans to wrap their smooth brain around it, so I'm going to make it very simple and clear. You know how you guys let Trey Turner walk? You know how you guys didn't go out of your way 2 off seasons ago when the Mets did and other teams did because you were in a transitionary year, because you knew how much you wanted Ohtani that following offseason? Well, that's exactly to an effing T what the Mets did this past offseason in their so-called punt transition year heading into 2024. There's literally no differences whatsoever in the approach. The Mets did the exact same thing because they're going to be pouncing as heavily as they possibly can. And just like Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Mets do not land Soto, it will not be for a lack of effort. They're going to throw everything at him, rightfully so. Disagree about the Nats contract. If it was 15 years, the Nats were entering a rebuild. They were looking for a new owner. No ownership, yes, that is a key factor to bear in mind, so that's true. I will say this, though. If he was prioritizing building a consistent winner, he still could have done that in DC, even if they were going into more of a transition, because they still could have acquired a lot of assets if they really tore everything down the way that they did. I get what you're saying. You don't have the CJ Abrams, the Woods of the world without trading Soto, so that's true. But I think it bears more in mind as to not so much on Soto staying when he could have stayed, but more so on his ability to go back if that happens all these years later, knowing that they've set themselves up. I love you too, Kevin. I know you're a schmuck, but it's okay. We've built many Dodger fan schmucks on the platform, and that's okay. Because even if guys talk crap, we're gonna go and do our back and forth as we always do. Or did Mets insiders tell you about Soto? The only thing I can tell you that I've heard that's outside of in the public eye is all things that we know in the public eye. The Mets are going to be relentless for Juan Soto. They're going to literally try to move mountains if they can for Juan Soto. It'll not be for a lack of effort when trying to land Juan Soto, simply put. Let's see any comments that you guys got for me before I get out of here. Oh, Wardy, are we getting Soto and Alonso? What do I think? I think there's a greater reality of the Mets landing one than there is both, and that I think just goes without saying. I would love both, but I love Alonso, but Alonso won't get me choked up and on the verge of potentially crying if we sign Alonso the way I would feel about Soto. Alonso's 30. Soto just turned 26. Soto's a World Series champion and his second World Series already, trying to win a second. He's an MVP. He's everything. He's literally everything. As much as I loved Alonso's home run heroics, Soto still did more in this year's postseason than Alonso did. So even when Alonso's trying to give his best efforts, really letting it all out there, Soto still does laps around him on a daily basis. I love Alonso, and I always will. I pray you can bring them both in. But if this is one of those things where it's one or the other, and the Mets know that they can pull the trigger on one or the other, where they know it's going to happen, you're taking one every single day of the week and twice on Sundays, like tonight. Lab, thank you for the $1 holla. I appreciate that as well. Thank you kindly. Lab says, Jett McNeil and Beatty for Brent Rooker from the A's. Thank you for the donation. That would never happen in a million years. Never happen in a million years. This is something I want to touch on, everybody. I did see a video pop up on the timeline this past week about Brent Rooker, how there's breaking news, the big blockbuster trade revealed and all this shit. Another nonsense piece of content from referencing an article of someone who's just literally just no more credible than I am as just a respective writer, just sharing their opinion on that situation. And that opinion was the Mets should go out and trade for Brent Rooker. Now, here's the thing. Brent Rooker's a tremendous talent, but the Mets are never, and I literally mean never, going to go out of their way to trade for more of a DH than anything at Rooker's value right now, unless the A's give us a slam dunk deal similar to AA absolutely fleecing the A's over recent years. That's the only way it happens. McNeil's contract is not going to go to the A's, even if the Mets eat the majority of it. Brett Beatty is not enough of a prospect to be a needle mover there. There is nothing at all for the Oakland A's to say, yes, we should agree with that. I know they're incompetent, so that is something that helps you. But that isn't happening. Anyone with common sense can put two and two together that as things currently stand, the Mets are far more likely to do everything in their power to try to land Soto and evaluate that free agent market and go from there. David Stearns loves trades. He will get very creative with trades this offseason. We know that. But just bear that in mind before thinking that things are a slam dunk. I will not be shocked if the Mets don't do one deal with the A's all offseason long. Because while they did build that relationship with the Paul Blackburn trade, and speaking of Paul, I didn't mention it, Ray, he's obviously going to be working his way back. He has like 4 or 5 month recovery, so he's not coming back anytime soon. We know that with his spinal fluid leakage, unfortunately. But in the case of everyone and everything else, this is absolutely a Mets team led by David Stearns that they're going to be strategic, they're going to be smart. But the same way that they're going to be smart is the same way that I hope you fans can be smart. So just bear that in mind with some of the content or articles that you read, even including myself, because I'm going to have moments where I'm going to be very excited and giddy about a player. But just remember the context of it. If we're talking about a player, look at a report. Are we talking about an actual report, or are we just talking about other people's opinions? Because those are two different things. A report is one thing. An opinion from a writer, that's no different than myself in the sense of level of credibility. That's just, you can take that and enjoy that. That's fine. But don't view that as factual information, as sourced information, because it's not. Those things I think are very important to be differentiated, because we're going to have a lot of that nonsense throughout the course of the offseason that I want to preface for each and every one of you amazing Mets fans. You're going to hear a lot of fake news. You're going to hear a lot of, oh, this is happening, that's happening. No, just wait until you actually see the reports. And if we have discussions about other people's opinions, I'll make it clear that we're having discussions about other people's opinions. So that is what I'm going to leave you with, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching live on our replay. Is greatly appreciated. This was an amazing segment. So happy to be back talking about the Mets with you guys. And we went 5+ days since our last live stream. I promise you guys we will not take as long. I'm hoping to be back in the next 48 hours for our next live show. At absolute worst 3 days from now, but we're going to have video content coming out. Probably going to have a video come out tomorrow as well, so be on the lookout for it. Until then, have a fantastic night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this, everybody. And stay tuned to my New York Knicks fans out there that are listening, watching this live on a replay. Your guy Wardy does Knicks content now as well. Check me out at Knicks Media. I'll be covering one, if not multiple games every single week with my man Richie at the Knicks Media YouTube channel every single week throughout the course of the season for the New York Knicks. So check us out there at Knicks Media. As again, content doesn't change here on WardyNYM. We got things working behind the scenes that is Mets related content that I can't break or tell you guys yet, but good things are happening. We're building a lot of stuff right now. So I'm excited to see this entire offseason unfold with each and every one of you. Thank you guys for the content. Thank you guys so much for the hype, for the kind words, for the donations, as always. Again, it is simply at Knicks Media Rapid. Just look up Knicks Media on YouTube, check it out, and you'll see me there weekly. Thank you guys again, as always, no matter what. Let's go Mets, baby. See you guys again real soon. Check us out also on audio, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it. Sorry, I had to slip it in there before we get out of here. Leave a 5-star review if you enjoy the content.